Mr. Fletcher, so I did watch all of these videos and try to figure out exactly what this looks like. And I just want to ask you about this bump firing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I designed something and I call it a bump band? Because I gather you can do this with bands and you can do it with your belt loop. So what if I design and market something I call the bump band to help me turn my semi-automatic, in the same way? Why wouldn't that then be a machine gun under the statute?
So we think that's still not functioning automatically because that's not a self-regulating mechanism. My understanding is that what those devices do is they help the shooter keep their trigger finger still, but the shooter still has to manage the movement of the rifle back and forth, hold it so that it moves backwards just the right distance in just the right direction, then hold it again so it moves forward in just the right distance in just the right direction. And what makes a bump stock different is that it's a device that is built for just this purpose. It has the finger ledge that holds your finger in place, but then it also has a sliding function built in so that when a shot is fired, the recoil automatically pushes the rifle back, lets it disengage from the trigger so the shooter doesn't have to manually release it, and then allows it to slide forward again just the right distance in just the right direction. Maybe
Mr. Mitchell can help me understand from his point of view what that means, because it seems like it helps you do it better and in a more stable way, but that it functions the same way. But the other question I have, look, intuitively, I am entirely sympathetic to your argument. I mean, and it seems like, yes, this is functioning like a machine gun would. But, looking at that definition, I think the question is, why didn't Congress pass that legislation to make this covered more clearly? I think your argument depends on volition, right? So let me give you a hypothetical and then tell me if you think this satisfies the definition of machine gun. Let's imagine someone builds a fully automatic machine gun, and I won't try to come up with the technology for exactly how this is going to happen, but they install a tripwire on their property, and they just leave the gun there unattended, walk away. Somebody trips the wire, and then it begins shooting lots of rounds.
Yeah.
Does that satisfy your definition of a machine gun?
I think it does, yes.
Why?
Because a single act, and I think we've used different words like volition. I think the idea that we're trying to get at is, does some separate act, is that required, some manual act required for each shot, or is a single continuous act resulting in the firing of multiple shots? That's an unusual way to activate a machine gun, obviously, but I think even if it's a tripwire, that's still one act by a person that initiates a multi-shot fire.
But it's an unintentional act in the same way you might say if your finger, because for the bump stock to work, you still have to have your finger right there, right?
You do, yeah.
And it according to the Fifth Circuit, what you're focusing on is the definition. It looked at it from the perspective of the gun and the machinery of the gun, but you still do need your finger there to kind of pull back the trigger the same way that you would if it was volitional.
So not quite, actually, Justice Barrett, and I think this is important. When, in the typical way that you fire these bump stocks, and this the Fifth Circuit acknowledged at 21A of the petition appendix, you don't initiate firing by pulling backward with your trigger finger. The trigger finger stays completely stationary.
Push.
You initiate by pushing. And what the expert said and the district court found is you could replace your trigger finger with a little plastic post attached to the bump stock, and it would work in exactly the same way. So it's true that you have to keep your finger there, and if you moved your finger away, the bump firing sequence would stop. But that's a pretty trivial additional piece of input from the shooter. Really, what's starting and continuing the sequence is the push forward.
Thank you.